charged with manslaughter, also criminally negligent homicide, for his role in the 2019 death of Elijah McClain. On the night of McClain's death, officers respond to a report of a, quote, suspicious person. Could it be more vague than that? So they respond, this person's leaving a convenience store. They question McClain, who was walking home from the store wearing a ski mask, maybe not the best idea at the time. He was unarmed and hadn't been accused of committing any crimes. The officers detain McClain, and they believe that at some point during that detention, he was reaching for a holstered gun. McClain was placed in a chokehold, and then, in an interesting wrinkle here, was injected with ketamine. How many times are we going to have two cases where ketamine is central to the story? That sends him into cardiac arrest just minutes later. He dies a week later, and the autopsy reveals that it was from complications of the ketamine that was administered while he was being forcefully restrained, and that was listed as the manner of death. The manner of death was still kind of undetermined, but it was a factor. Woodyard was suspended from the Aurora Police Department pending the outcome of his trial. So, just an amazing case. And the officer with the Aurora Police Department that testified today on the recovery position of the victim. So he appears at the scene. He's helping transport Elijah McClain. Let's go in and listen to that let's go in and listen to her testimony.
Before the ketamine is injected into Mr. McClain, how would you describe Mr. McClain's movements?
So I saw like him, I guess, randomly like clenching muscles and moving around a lot. I wasn't sure like what exactly he was doing, if he was trying to assault anybody or if I didn't know what he was doing, but I would say clenching muscles in different spots.
Officer Ward, are you just saying what we just saw you thought might be Elijah McClain trying to assault someone?
I'm not sure is what I'm saying. I know when I initially came up, I was worried he might be trying to kick somebody or something, like, I don't know. So I went up. That's the only reason I went up, to try to assist.
I'm talking about what we just watched. What about that gives you any indication that he is trying to assault someone?
His movements. So like the muscle movements. I'm not saying I know exactly what he was doing, but that is indicative of the possibility that he could be trying to assault somebody. People still do that when they're handcuffed sometimes.
So what you just described as random clenching of his muscles, you think that that's a sign he's trying to assault someone?
I'm saying it could be.
It could be. Okay. What did you hear him doing there?
I heard like groans. I couldn't, I guess, categorize it better than that. Some noises, groans.
Okay. He's not cursing out the officers.
No, I didn't hear that.
When he's clenching, that's like his muscles are spasming.
I'm not sure if it's spasming or if he's clenching them himself. I'm not sure.
Okay. He's not punching anybody here.
I didn't see him punch anybody there.
He's not biting anybody.
Not that I saw, no.
His movement, he was actually forward, right?
I think so. At the if you're talking about around this time, like near the time that I had his arm, I do believe he went forward at one point.
And that's away from you and the other officers who are on his back.
Sustained.
That forward or away from where you and the officers on his back are?
Forward from where we were.
If he's trying to assault you, how can he do that by moving forward?
Objection, speculation.
I'll allow it.
Well, if he moved forward, he would be able to kick easier, I would say, but.
Now, this position here where Mr. McClain has sort of moved forward, and we heard Mr. Roedema say something along the lines of, you want shoulder or ass. Is it sometime shortly after this that Mr. McClain is injected with the ketamine?
I believe it was shortly after that he was injected, I did not know at the time what he was injected with. I've obviously since learned that, but I had no idea what he was injected with. But I do believe he got injected with something around that time.
That is the sound of uneasiness. On the stand is an officer, Alicia Ward. She's there at the scene. She's describing the motions, the body movements of Elijah McClain, and making it sound kind of sort of like maybe he was a threat somehow to her or the other officers. Catherine Lizardo is here. We're going to get Michael Brown back. We had a little disconnect there. But Catherine, let me ask you this. Is this, did she come across as, protective of the blue line, or are you buying it?
Well, she's coming across, like you said, very uneasy and unsure how she's actually going to respond here. She's trying to say that Elijah's clenched muscles and his movement caused her to believe that he might assault the officers, but she did not want to say those words, and she's having a hard time describing as to why she felt that way, because there is obviously a racial undertone here, and she does not want to be perceived on the stand that she's believing that way that Elijah might assault officers because of his race. Now, of course, there's that question of why did they have to inject him with anything in the first place when he was, and there's a video that we didn't see with that kind of small movements that he was doing.
Yeah, I mean, the whole scenario, sounds so familiar, unfortunately, except for the whole ketamine thing, which was administered. Two of the EMTs are also involved in this, and we'll have trials later, but they administered the ketamine. It's basically as a sedative. We know in the Maya Kowalski case, it can be used for various things in massive doses, but more traditionally a sedative, and it was used here to calm this guy down. So interesting testimony. Let's go back in for more.
What instructions did you just receive from Mr. Roedema?
So Officer Roedema told me to put my knuckles around the spot there, like underneath, essentially like in front of, a little bit underneath the ear here on like a pressure point, and said to, I forget the exact verbiage he just used, but essentially said something like drive if he fights or something like that, or like put pressure if he fights, something along those lines.
Okay. I want to break each of those things down a little bit. What, you said this is a pressure point?
I don't have that much knowledge about it, but yeah, there's essentially, from my understanding, there's a point here kind of like in front of the ear where if you press hard and quickly, it can kind of like take somebody's attention away quickly. So. Okay,
so the idea is if you put pressure there, it causes a lot of pain to the person?
It may, yeah. It's to take attention away quickly if needed, if somebody is like fighting or resisting or doing something that we would need attention to be drawn away so that we could do something else, like whether you do that before they're handcuffed and then you use that time, that distraction to get them handcuffed or something like that.
Okay. And is it your understanding that the distraction or the attention that you're taking away is the serious pain that would cause the person?
Yes.
Did you end up actually driving your knuckles in there and causing Mr. McClain pain?
No, I just left my hand there. I never felt the need to.
Okay, why not?
During the time I was there, I just didn't feel like it was necessary. I didn't feel like anybody was in danger enough at that point that it would be beneficial or that it was needed.
Because he wasn't assaulting anybody.
At that time, I don't think so, no.
One of the weird things about this case, weird is my legal term for this, is that you have unusual charges and you have the cops involved. Two other police officers were already tried in this case. They're tried together. One was found guilty, one acquitted. So, Catherine, we're talking about these charges as, let me make sure I get them correct here because they are very specific. Reckless manslaughter, which is a unique kind of term, I think. Oh, good, Michael's back. And then criminally negligent homicide, which we're much more familiar with. So, how important, Catherine, is it for the prosecution in this case to make sure the jury understands the elements of these nuanced crimes?
Oh, it's very important. That's probably one of the reasons why those police officers, although they were tried together, that one was acquitted and one was found guilty. That is very unusual circumstances as well, and it's bewildering how that could be the case without seeing the entire trial, because I didn't see the entire trial here. But yeah, those nuances are very critical, especially as to who were doing what at a particular time.
So, Michael, as I understand it, and you're a former prosecutor, you have a reckless connection to the manslaughter, whereas manslaughter is a lesser form of murder. And so there's an intent sliding scale here, I suppose. How would you describe to a jury reckless manslaughter?
Well, intentional murder, a murder one or a murder two in our state, is an intentional act, something that you have an intentional, your conscious aim or objective is to cause a result, i.e. the death. Recklessness is when you're acting in a way which you're really not, where your conduct is likely to result in the end result, which is death. But again, the mens rea, or the element of, is not intent, but rather a recklessness standard, which is above a negligence standard, above a criminal negligence standard, but not as heightened as an intentional standard.
Yeah, and this is, let me ask you this follow-up, Michael, because I think even the explanation makes it understandable how a jury could have trouble, grasping those distinctions at the point where maybe they just say, well, I don't know, let's go with this one. I mean, in your experience, is it sometimes, does it come down to that because they can't really define these degrees?
Yeah, Mike, we always have, not always, but oftentimes there's compromise verdicts. And what the prosecutors do a lot of times in the indictment, we'll put what we call lesser included charges with the hope that you can get a compromise verdict if they don't feel that their top count is as strong as they're suggesting. And from a defense standpoint, listen, you got to argue, hey, these cops did what they were supposed to do. They're patrolling, they're doing law enforcement, and the end result is really because of what these EMTs did, not because of what the police officers did.
Yeah, that is interesting, and they will be tried later, as I suggested. So you've got criminally negligent homicide, which may be here, and then as the water rises,